Hello, my name is John Gabriel. I'm an interviewer for the Public Library of Cincinnati and Hamilton County. I'm interviewing Mr. Louis Prince today, June 14th, at the main library in downtown Cincinnati. Our camera operator today is Dennis Daly. Good afternoon, Mr. Prince. Thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Let's start off with a little bit about what you were doing before the war. Where were you born? And where did you grow up? That sort of thing.
I was born right here in Cincinnati at Christ Hospital, and I'll probably die there, in 1919. And my family had lived here before that. I was sent away to school. First I went to Walnut Hills High School, and then I went away to a prep school in the East. And then I was lucky enough to be accepted at Princeton University, which was not as hard to get into then as it is now. And the smartest thing I think I did was to enroll in the ROTC program in freshman year, because they had horses. It was a horse-drawn, partially horse-drawn field artillery unit, and I loved horses. So that's how I happened to sign up, and my father thought I was wasting my time, that I should be taking something to prepare for the optical business, which was our family business. And anyway, I got to like the field artillery very much, and when I graduated, I received a commission as a first lieutenant. Second lieutenant, excuse me.
What year did you graduate?
Please?
What year was it you graduated?
1941.
1941. So you went right into the military from there?
In June, when I graduated, I came home to Cincinnati. I had received my commission at the same time. And I went up to Columbus the very next day to say that I wanted to go on active duty.
Wow.
And a week later, I was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma.
And, excuse me, I had something in my throat. Where did you go from Fort Sill?
What'd you say?
From Fort Sill. Where?
From Fort Sill, at the end of the course, it was a refresher course, they asked all of us what corps area we would like to go to. And I liked climate, warm climate, so I asked to go to Hawaii. True to Army, they sent me in the opposite direction, and I ended up in the 9th Infantry Division in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, which we called a line outfit, and that's where I wanted to be.
Okay. Is that where you were when war broke out?
Yes, I was there. We were there at the time of Pearl Harbor. Before Pearl Harbor, we had ancient equipment, and we had draftees who were just drafted for 1 year, and we had a whole bunch of real old Army personnel, sergeants and officers from West Point, and they observed all the courtesies and regulations of the regular Army. And then came Pearl Harbor, and all of a sudden everything changed.
How so?
Up till then, there had been lots of pacifists, and people were against us being in the war. In fact, people in uniform weren't always so welcome. And we didn't wear our uniforms off post. But after Pearl Harbor, it changed. Everybody was behind us, and we began to get new equipment. Up until then, for instance, instead of having 50 caliber machine guns, we had sticks.
No kidding.
You know, which we would point up in the air at enemy planes. And the artillery pieces were French 75s left over from World War I, model of 1897.
Did you have ammunition to fire?
Yes, we had plenty of ammunition. And that, if I could digress for 1 minute,
Take it in.
I would like to mention something. This is one of the things that I will never forget. I was a green lieutenant. I was young, and all the personnel in my battery were old Army men, 10 or 15 years older than I was, most of them, some of them getting ready to retire. And I was sort of scared of them. So when I would have to inspect the barrel of a gun, I would see a little speck of dirt, and I'd be sort of afraid to say anything about it for fear of offending the sergeant. Well, one day, we had this old ammunition left over from World War I, and we had what we call a misfire. In other words, they put the shell in the gun and pulled the lanyard, and the shell didn't go off. It was a misfire. Nobody would know what was wrong with it. It might just be smoldering or heaven knows what. But there was a procedure for the battery officer, and that was myself, to tell all the personnel to go away to a safe distance, maybe 50 yards away, and then by himself, he was supposed to take a ramrod and attach something on the end of it and push the shell gently out of the breech from the muzzle. And I was not brave or anything. I just didn't really think of the explosion that might occur. But I knew that the procedure, I'd been very well trained, and so I went ahead and did it very gently, and the shell fell out. But all the rest of the battery was watching, wondering what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And ever after that, I was accepted.
That was your rite of passage.
They joked with me, and I was okay.
Oh, that's great. What do you do with the shell now that it's on the ground?
Oh, I had some rags there, and it fell on the rag, and then the ordnance came, and they took it away.
Wow.
But I wasn't thinking of the danger at all. I was dumb then.
Well, you know, it was your job to do. Okay, so you're in training now. The war is on, I suppose, at this point.
Yeah.
How long was it before you left the U.S. and went overseas?
In the spring of 1942, we began to do amphibious training with expeditions to Chesapeake Bay. And so that we knew we were going to land somewhere, make a hostile landing. And we didn't know where. And in the meantime, I had met a girl on a blind date, and we got married. And 3 weeks after we were married, we were shipped out.
Oh, boy.
And I was gone for 3 years. And that's when we went off to North Africa. We didn't know where we were going.
How do you land with an artillery piece?
How do
you make it an amphibious landing with an artillery piece?
Yeah, well, up until that time, as I said, we had these old French 75s. Just 3 weeks before we left, we got 105 howitzers. And for the landing, they gave us 75 millimeter pack howitzers, which 2 of them could fit in the small ramp boat. And a 3/4 ton truck could also fit in one of those ramp boats. And so we had 6 ramp boats for their firing battery, 2 guns in each ramp boat, and then the trucks.
I see. So one battery consists of 12 guns?
One battery, no, 4 guns in a battery.
Oh, 4 guns in a battery.
Now
Okay.
I think they have 6, but then it was 4.
Okay. All right, so then you headed over to North Africa to make the landings in Morocco?
West coast of Morocco, near, not far from Rabat, about 12 miles north of Rabat, at the mouth of the Cebu River at a little town called Port Lyautey.
And you mentioned earlier before the interview that you got a hot reception from the French.
Very, yes. They knew we were coming. They had been warned, and they had the beach surveyed in for their artillery, so they had accurate artillery fire. And they strafed us with P-39s, which they had received from President Roosevelt on the Lend-Lease program before the fall of France in 1940.
In the landing, where does the artillery come in? I assume the assault troops land first and you come in behind?
The infantry assault landed in the first 5 waves.
I see.
And we came in the 6th and 7th waves.
Were you still under attack when you got on shore? Were the French still shelling the beach by the time you landed?
Oh, yes, indeed they were. In fact, I didn't First of all, it was very dark, and we were supposed to land at dawn. Well, things got delayed because it was extremely rough, and some of the men were drowned and crushed, some of the infantry, as they climbed down the nets from the big transports they would come on into the ramp boats. And then the ramp boat would be floating up and down on the waves, and the ship would be going like that, and you had to sort of jump and hope you landed in the boat.
Oh, brother.
And it was, but anyway, then after we got off the beach, there wasn't much of a problem.
As you were heading toward the beach, could you see the gunfire going on? You knew it was going to be...
Oh, yes, we could see it. We heard it when it started.
What were you thinking as you're puttering towards shore?
Well, we were hoping it would all be free. We had a special, the infantry had a special party that was going to sail up the mouth of the Cebu River and try to get to the airport, which is our ultimate objective, and try to sort of sabotage something or get it started. Well, they shot at them as soon as they got to the mouth of the river, so we knew that we could hear the machine gun fire, and we knew that things were starting. And then there were naval ships all around us, destroyers, and also the battleship Texas, which opened fire on the Casbah at the top of a hill where the enemy guns were, the French guns. And you could see the 45-inch, what were they? Very heavy artillery from the Texas landing on the Casbah.
Wow.
It was a spectacular sight.
That's terrific.
But
you weren't wounded you weren't wounded, were you, on the...
No.
Okay.
No.
Well, you went... I assume you proceeded through Morocco fairly quickly after the landing.
3 days afterward, they were ordered to surrender by Admiral Darlan, who was in Algiers, and so they did. And the French artillery officers, the troops were mostly Senegalese and Arabs, but the officers were all French, regular army from Saint-Cyr, and they were professionals. And they gave a banquet for us.
Get out of here.
For the artillery officers.
Wow. Those days are gone. So you left there and you went to Tunisia, I assume. Is that right?
We went, we were there for several months, just training. And we were there at the time of the Casablanca Conference when President Roosevelt and Winston Churchill came, and they actually reviewed our troops, and I can remember standing in front of the battery, and they came closer than those windows over there.
No kidding. Winston Churchill and FDR walked right past you? Or
We just drove by, and
past
we
you.
were standing at attention and so forth.
Terrific. What were your accommodations like there? Did you...
The accommodations, we were in the woods. We were actually in the middle of a cork forest called the Forest of Marmora, and at first we cut off the bark and started fires with the cork, which burnt beautifully to keep us warm. It was cold by then, and then we heard that the natives depended on that for their living, so we had to stop using the cork. But it was all no shelter at all, just tents.
Oh,
and most of us got malaria.
No kidding.
And I remember having malaria and being in a pyramidal tent. No beautiful nurses. They were orderlies, and they brought us hot chili for breakfast.
Oh.
And some of them had dysentery, and I've never been able to eat chili since.
That's good.
Even in Cincinnati.
Oh, no. Well, I'll let you go. Tell us, just go on from there with your
Are we taking too
experiences.
long?
Heck no, we can take all the time you want.
Well, then
This is your time.
We went to a place in Algeria called Tlemcen near the Moroccan border, and we were there for a very short time. And in the meantime, General Montgomery had been pushing the Germans back along the North African coast toward Tripoli and Tunisia. And the Germans took a notion to occupy Tunisia, which they hadn't until then, which was also a French protectorate. So they were afraid that the Germans would come out west from Tunisia, which they tried to do, and you may remember hearing about the Kasserine Pass. And it was a kind of a disaster. They routed the British and American troops that were trying to hold the pass. It was the 10th Panzer Division, and they had some pretty tough troops and armor experienced. And so General, I think it was Friedenthal at the time, but I think it was really General Eisenhower that decided to call all the artillery from the 9th Division, which was back in Morocco, just the artillery, to come to Tunisia to try to stop this outbreak from the Kasserine Pass. And we traveled 770 miles to a place just west of the Kasserine Pass called Thala. I guess you pronounce it Thala. But we got there in the dead of night, and we stopped only long enough to put ammunition on. We had done the 770 miles in less than 3 days. And we loaded ammunition and then went right into position. And it so happened that I happened to be in the lead of our battalion, B Battery, which I was in, and I was the executive officer. We're leading the battalions up into the positions which the battery commanders had been reconnoitering and found. So we were to go up this road until we came to a point where our scout corporal would be waiting for us from the B Battery. And it was a matter of training. It's just something that the artillery does and always does, and we had practiced it hundreds of times. Well, the British and some Americans were running back against us, and the road was very narrow, and they were yelling at us to turn around and go back, that it was suicide up ahead and that we were crazy to go any further and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
And I was pretty worried. I was wondering, I could hear shell fire, of course, and see flashes as we got closer. And I thought, am I leading the battery into the enemy troops? But fortunately, my Corporal Ricky, who I had trained and who we were very close, was there on the road. And I can remember him saying, "What in the hell took you guys so long?" And it was the happiest voice I've ever heard. And so then we went in position, and we did our battery, and plus the other battalions that were there, did stop the Germans, and we were only firing at a range of 900 yards at that point.
Oh boy. Which
was pretty close for us to be. And but anyway, they turned back, and after it was over, 3 days later, which happened to be my birthday, the artillery general, General Irwin, came around to every battery, and he stopped his command car, and he congratulated every single cannoneer.
Wow.
Shook their hands.
Wow.
And we got a presidential citation for that.
Were you still firing the pack howitzers? Or
Oh, no. We had, as soon as we landed in Morocco, we turned over the pack howitzers to the French. In fact, we gave them our 105s too. And when we got to Tlemcen, we got a whole new equipment from the States.
I see.
All new trucks, all new guns and everything. So we were 105 howitzers.
Okay.
And they usually attached a Bofors gun to us, often a British crew, to protect us.
I'll be darned, I never knew that.
Because the Germans had air superiority
I see.
in Tunisia.
When you were only 900 yards away, were you able to actually see the shells landing? Or?
No, we were deflated behind a hill, thank the Lord. But we were bombed, and shells landed in the area. We had a few casualties.
Germans have counter battery fire coming back at you?
Mm-hmm.
I see.
Yeah, from the tanks and artillery.
I'll be darned. I'd read a little bit about that Thala Pass. That was an important time to stop the Germans, because the days before Kasserine were a real rout.
Yeah.
And
they were still using Stuka dive bombers there, which are pretty old-fashioned by then, but the Bofors guns would keep them up high enough. We did lose one gun. It had a direct hit on a gun. Lost some men.
Well, after Tunisia, or how much longer were you in Tunisia?
After that, we fought at a place called McNassie. We were attached to the 1st Armored Division, taken away from the 9th Division. The 9th Division went to El Ghoutar, and we went to a place called McNassie. In the meantime, Rommel was backing up from the Mareth line. And when we were at McNassie, we had one of our guns exploded. We had often had shells that wouldn't go into the breach because they were bent. The Arabs were unloading them in the ports, and they dropped some of them, I guess, and bent them. So they wouldn't go in, so they'd take a ramrod and try to push them in. And I was always afraid they'd hit the firing pin, which one day they did, and the gun exploded, and we lost some men.
Oh, boy.
And I was pretty upset about that because I thought it was my fault, though it wasn't really. We had to do it. And so I went up to the OP for a while, and with the infantry. And it was on top of a mountain, and you could see almost to the ocean, which was over 30 miles away. And we could see the German troops retreating. I mean, all you could see was the dust coming up from the road, but that was the entire German army under Rommel retreating from Montgomery, who had broken through the Mareth line.
Wow.
And then eventually, after that, we were supposed to be holding the Germans there, which we did. And then we went up north, and parallel to the Mediterranean, went along with another division and captured Bizerte, which was the other. Tunis was the main port, but Bizerte was also we called it Bizerte, was another important port.
Are you fighting all the way?
Yes.
Yes. Stopping, setting up, and fighting?
Yes, but it wasn't heavy fighting. It was for the infantry. I don't want you to forget the artillery is a very, very safe haven compared to the infantry front lines.
Did you ever have a situation in North Africa where the Germans broke through and they were near your position or anything like that?
No, we didn't. We did in Normandy, but not in Tunisia.
I see.
Then after Tunisia, we went to Sicily. We went into Sicily several weeks after the main invasion. We didn't have to make any kind of a assault landing.
But the fighting was still going on in Sicily?
Oh yeah, we fought for, I guess we landed the end of July, or maybe the end of, I forget, but we had about 3 weeks of fighting.
Were you fighting just Germans or Germans and Italians? Or?
Right in the middle of Sicily, going up a road. On one side were the British, and on the other side, to the left of us, was General Patton and his armies who had captured Palermo and then gone along the northern coast, along the ocean, Mediterranean. And they eventually captured Messina, and we were closed out between the British and the Americans at a place called Randazzo, which is near Mount Etna. But it was very difficult because it was very mountainous, and we had to use mules to get our supplies up to the forward observers.
Wow. Did you ever take a trip up to the forward observer? Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean for that to happen.
Yes.
I assume they're right in the thick of things. Is that right?
I took my turn once in a while forward observing, but the battalion commander didn't like us to do that because I was supposed to be in charge of the guns.
What was life like as a forward observer?
It was hell.
I believe you.
Yeah, it was absolutely hell. I had no rest, and danger all the time. Dodging shells in foxholes, and usually not much to eat.
Wow. Did you carry a weapon with you? Were you carrying a weapon also?
Oh yeah, we had to carry. We carried. Well, originally we were supposed to carry a .45 revolver, but the colonel made us carry .30 caliber carbines, which were a drag.
Did you ever fire it?
No.
Okay, good.
Oh, I fired it, but not at anybody.
Yeah.
No. That was no. I never had to.
Was the fighting in Sicily as tough as the fighting in North Africa?
Well, it was. No, it wasn't. Not for us, anyway. The infantry, they have a tough time anywhere, and they had a tough time. Yes.
Were you ever under attack from the Stukas again? Did the Stukas attack you any further?
No, there were no Stukas anymore. They were outdated. But yes, we had air raids.
I'll be darned.
In fact, one time we were out in the forward slope of a hill, which is a very bad place, instead of being defilated for the artillery. And fortunately, I was on pins and needles the whole time, thinking we'd be surely bombed, but we weren't. It was near Troina, which the 1st Infantry Division took. And then after Sicily, we were in a town called Cefalù, and that's between Messina and Palermo. And we got to go into Palermo once in a while for a few hours of leave.
Yeah.
And everybody got dysentery, so it wasn't too pleasant. But we heard over from Axis Sally, one of those German radio stations, this woman said in English one night, I didn't actually hear it, but somebody else did. She said, "You men of the 9th Infantry Division are going to be paid in pounds next payday," meaning that we were going to go to England. And we didn't know it, but by golly, by that time, a month later, we were in England.
I'll be darned. Was it just rest and relaxation, or in England, or was it more training? Or
well, England, we went there. We arrived there in about November of '43, and the idea was that we were to train for Normandy. We were not going to make an assault, thank the Lord, but we were to be seasoned troops who would come in after the beaches were secured and take over part of the sectors.
I see.
And they wanted some seasoned divisions to do that, and they had us, and I think they had the 1st Division came. But anyway, we were in England, and I want to tell you something about our stay in England. First of all, when there were so many American troops who had gone directly from the States to England, waiting for the invasion, and they were homesick, and they were dissatisfied, unhappy, and so they didn't get along with the English people. And it was a problem for all the commanders, I know. And the English people, on the other hand, kind of resented them. What was it they used to say? They're paid too much, and well, I forget the expression, but anyway, it was quite different with us. When we landed in a place called Greenock, right near Glasgow in Scotland, and on the wharf when we got off, when we debarked, there were Red Cross ladies serving coffee, speaking English. It was like coming home. And everybody was so happy, and the English people were so good to us.
Oh, that's nice.
And so when we ended up in Winchester, the whole division was around there. I forgot to mention that at the end of Sicily, I was transferred to the division headquarters temporarily because to get me promoted to captain. There wasn't an opening in our battalion, and the colonel wanted me to get promoted, so he had a friend in the division headquarters, and I got to do that. So I was a liaison officer, and I helped training the infantry troops for the invasion. And anyway, when we got to Winchester, everything was very friendly, and some of our men ended up marrying English girls afterward, but the English liked us and we loved them. And after we finally went to Normandy on D+4, the beach was secure then, we went through a division called the 90th Division, 90th Infantry Division, and we immediately attacked westward, and we cut off the Cotentin Peninsula, which is where Cherbourg is, at the top of the Cotentin Peninsula. And it was the first time that our division had really gotten a lot of publicity. We got a lot of publicity because we had cut the peninsula and bottled the Germans up in Cherbourg. And when that happened, they flew the American flag over the Winchester Cathedral.
Wow, that's nice.
And they had, they established in the cathedral a little sort of a spot in memorial for the 9th Division dead. And I took my wife Betty there some years after the war, and I was still there.
I'll be darned. That's wonderful.
So then after that, we did capture Cherbourg, and I was still liaison officer from the division, and I would go to other division headquarters and bring back information. It was a very safe job. The only thing that could happen would be maybe a sniper or a road mine, but or a stray bomb, but nothing ever did.
Good.
And then we got down to the hedgerow fighting just before the breakthrough at St. Lo, Perrier Road. There had been a lot of casualties in the hedgerow fighting, and I was very homesick for the 60th Field Artillery. I wanted to be back. And so as soon as there was an opening, I was able to get transferred back to the 60th Field. And the colonel put me in the Fire Direction Center, which is sort of a place where you transfer the calls from the observers into commands for the guns.
I see.
And lots of maps and protractors and figuring things out, which I love to do. And
Do you mind talking for maybe just 2 minutes about how that process works? When you get a call from the forward observer, what happens?
Yeah, well, the 3 batteries, there are 3 batteries in a battalion, 3 firing batteries, and they have communication with the battalion fire direction center, which is very close by, but not within voice distance. So they have telephone communication, and then we have 4 observers out with each of the infantry battalions. 1 battery has a 4 observer with each battalion. And then we have an airplane observer, an air observer, and he's up there looking for targets. And they send all of their data when they find a target into the Battalion Fire Direction Center. And also the Division Artillery Fire Direction Center, which is in charge of all of the 4 artillery battalions in a division, in those days. And they can call in information too to the Fire Direction Center on other targets. And then we get at the Fire Direction Center, you get the coordinates on the map of where the target is, and then you measure the range from the batteries, and you have a ruler and a protractor. You have something called the base point where all the guns have registered, so they have a common reference point. So you go right or left so many degrees.
I see.
Mils, they call them, and which is a part of a degree. And then you tell them what kind of, you have a set of commands, and it includes the charge, each shell can have different charges in it, so that it goes different distances.
I see.
And all of that information, the charge and the type of ammunition, and whether it's a smoke shell or a high explosive or something else. They even had propaganda shells, which would be full of propaganda and leaflets, and it would explode and tell the Germans to surrender, that we would treat them well. And anyway, the Fire Direction Center would give the commands, and then the battery executive, who had been me, would translate those into commands for the guns.
I see. Thank you for that lesson. I always wondered how that worked.
Well, now it's all done with a computer, I think. They
I
don't.
imagine so.
Yeah, the way we did it, it took a little math and a little quick thinking, but I don't think it does so much anymore. This is all for indirect fire. That's when we're defilated behind a hill, and most light artillery supporting infantry is defilated behind a hill. You don't see the target.
Mm-hmm.
You never see the target, and it's miles away. The range of a howitzer, a 105 howitzer, is 12,000 yards, so it can be 6 or 7 miles away.
Yeah.
And anyway, the direct fire would be if tanks came and attacked the battery position, then you have to get there and actually shoot it out. And that never happened to us.
Again, thank the Lord.
Yeah, but it did to some of them, and some commanders, in particular, I imagine General Patton, would make his artillery go right out in front and shoot at tanks.
Wow. Wow.
I wouldn't have enjoyed that.
No, I'm sure. Well, when I interrupted you there, you were returning to the 60th around St. Lo, I suppose.
Yeah, we were down at the St. Lo-Perrier Road getting ready to for a tremendous bombing run. They used both the 9th Air Force, which was for tactical purposes, and the 8th Air Force, which was strategic, to bomb on a strip of ground along this road so that everything would be annihilated and that General Patton's army could go through without any resistance, hopefully. And so we were among the battalions who had to mark the front line with colored smoke shells. We had red smoke shells, and we fired them. Presumably the pilots would look down and see the red line and not bomb in back of the red line. Well, something awful happened. Some say the wind blew the smoke back, and others say that they just made mistakes, and others say that there was so much haze from the bombs falling and exploding that the bombs fell short. Many bombs fell short, and there was an observation post with General McNair, who was a high lieutenant general in SHAEF, Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, and he was killed by a stray bomb. Well, to make a long story short, one of those stray bombs landed right next to our Fire Direction Center.
Wow.
And it blew us all up. We had a couple of casualties. I was buried underneath some dirt and a tent pole, and I couldn't get out.
No kidding.
And they dug us out, and that's how I got my Purple Heart. It wasn't so glamorous, but I'm very proud of it.
Good, yes, you should be.
And then General Patton went through, of course, as you know, and got all the way to the German border.
Did you follow him?
We went along north, his north flank,
Okay.
along the north of France. And it was very little resistance until we got to Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
And we were the first Allied division to enter Belgium after Dunkirk.
Wow.
So the Belgian government gave us 9th Division a Belgian fourragère, which all of us can wear, and which any member of the 9th Division can wear at any time.
Is it an emblem or
It's a kind of a ribbon that hangs down here, sort of a cord, a braided cord,
I see.
red and green. And it attaches to your shoulder and comes down here, loops back.
I see. Very nice. I hadn't heard of one.
Well, there's a French fourragère too, which has been awarded to a number of divisions.
Did you experience then some fighting immediately in Belgium, or did things not heat up until?
No, we were in Belgium. We fought in Belgium. It was a little sticky there, and in one particular place, I took my battery. By then, I was a battery commander, and which I loved even more than being battery executive. And we took a position in an old chateau, and we had the guns out in the gardens around the chateau, and we all stayed inside the chateau, except when we had to fire, then we'd go outside. But the little town, and I can't think of the name of the town, it was near a town called Spa. That was the name of the town. It was a big town, resort town, and this was a little town near there. Well, the Germans had gone through there and they had kidnapped 3 girls. And our infantry had rescued the girls. They had chased the Germans down and found these girls and brought them back to this little town. And the infantry was long gone. Our infantry was up forward, and we were the only Americans around. So the mayor and the priest and somebody else came, and they said they wanted us all to come to the church for a Thanksgiving service. And I said, well, we can't all come because as you can see, we're shooting. And they all used to stand around and watch us shoot and then cheer when we would fire around. But I said, we can't come, we're shooting at the Germans. And I said, but I'll come and I'll take the first sergeant. So we went to the church service, and we couldn't decide whether to wear our caps or not, because when you're wearing sidearms, you're supposed to wear your cap. So we decided to take our caps off anyway. We stayed in the church, and they had a service, mass, and then I let the sergeant stay there all night, and he didn't come back for about 2 days. No, he came back the next day, but he had a real time. But I felt I had to go back to the battery, and I took my wife there. I guess about 10 years later, to show her the place. I had a habit of, when we went to Europe, of taking her somewhere that I'd been.
Good.
And the people in there still remembered this, and the person who ran the restaurant knew the mayor, and she brought the mayor over, and they wouldn't charge us anything for our dinner.
Isn't that nice?
And then we went on to I guess the worst thing next was the Hurtgen Forest. That was really rough.
I've heard bad
And
things.
at that time, the Germans were firing those V1 weapons over us, and we hadn't seen those before. And we also saw the first German jets.
Did they attack you with the jets?
No, they didn't attack us. They were attacking our heavy bombers
I see.
that were going overhead.
You could pick them out easily in the air.
Well, yeah, the anti-aircraft couldn't touch them.
I'll be done.
They were going so fast. You know, it was something that had never been seen before.
Yeah. Wow. Did any of the combat in the Hurtgen Forest directly affect you?
Yes, it was awful because there were all the trees, and there was a lot of shell fire from the Germans. You see, we were in their territory now, and they were defending their homeland, and they fought very viciously, and the shells would explode in the trees, and the shrapnel would fall down. We had quite a few battery casualties there.
I'll be done.
Of course, the infantry was much worse. But one thing we did have that I remember was that one guy in the battery shot a deer, and we had fresh meat for the first time, I guess, in months.
Wow. Did your battery, this is probably a foolish question, but did you ever have occasion to take prisoners, or did you lose any guys to being taken?
We lost, yes, we lost some. We lost some in Belgium, and I tried to go after them. One of them was wounded, and he was treated by the infantry, and I found him in one of our aid stations. But the others, there were 3 or 4 that were captured at different times, and 2 of them were prisoners for the rest of the war.
Wow.
And one of them, the infantry rescued, and we got him back.
I'll be done. How did they come to be captured?
Well, they were with the infantry.
Oh, forward observer type?
Forward observers, yeah.
I see.
And our battery commander was also captured before I was a battery commander. When I was in my previous battery commander, Thurtle, was behind the lines in the hedgerow fighting. And he managed to hide in a house, and they didn't find him, the Germans, but they went all around him.
Wow.
And he was there for a couple of days and nights, and finally got released when our troops came and recaptured that ground.
Boy, that was lucky.
And another guy was captured by the French, a close friend of mine. He was captured and in Morocco, and he was taken not to a prison camp, but to a tourist hotel in Meknes, and treated like a guest of honor.
Wow. Well, you could have tougher duty than that.
Yeah.
Did you? I think we're probably getting close on time here. Okay, we've got just about 10 minutes left. And I wanted to touch on something I read on the web, is that your unit was not only in Hurtgen Forest, but participated in the Battle of the Bulge.
Yes, we did. We held one corner of the Battle of the Bulge.
Tell us about that.
Well, it was not very difficult for us.
Really?
We were actually, at the time, we were attacking, throwing shells into Bonn and Bad Godesberg, which are beautiful cities. Of course, I'd never been there. I didn't know they were beautiful cities, but we were just shelling them with really no targets, just at random, which we didn't often do. But for some reason, that was our mission, and we were firing at those 2 cities when we heard about the Remagen Bridge. And they called us down, and we went down in the middle of the night and got down there in the morning. And our our infantry went over right away. It was the 9th Infantry, 9th Armored Division that captured the bridge. And our division came and helped them after they were over the bridge. Within 12 hours, I would say. Our infantry was across. We didn't cross until, I guess, 2 days later, because the Remagen Bridge couldn't hold us.
Oh,
and they had to get a pontoon bridge across.
Neat, neat.
And in that place, one of the worst thing happened one of the worst things that I can remember. It was all my fault. And after we were across, we had a battery position, and it was close to the bridge, close to the river. And so we were getting lots of stray bombs and shrapnel in the vicinity from anti-aircraft. And at that moment, everybody in the battery, everybody in the battalion had been able to get a leave for 3 days at one time or another. And at that moment, it was time for me to go for 3 days to Paris. And so I took off. But before I went, I thought, well, I'm going to put this battery headquarters in a little safer position because the shrapnel is dropping all over. So I picked a very sheltered position and put the radio operator and the Jeep driver in a little different place. Well, that night, when I was on my way to Paris, a bomb hit the thing squarely.
Wow.
And killed them all, 3 of them. And I've just, something I'll never forget.
I imagine.
The man's name was Osowski. I know that he forgives me.
Good.
Because I was only trying to do what was right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's a shame. When the Ardennes offensive occurred, the Germans didn't get through to your unit then, did they?
They didn't what?
They didn't make it break through and get
We
to
were
you.
nowhere near them.
Oh,
no,
good.
No, we were, as I say, about 6 or 8 hours away.
Okay.
And then they put us on a corner, and we held that corner, and there was nothing to it. They were little attacks, but we fired a lot of rounds. But the infantry was well dug in, and they didn't suffer too much.
Good. After this action, did you go further through Germany?
After that, we did something called holding the Ruhr pocket, and that wasn't too much. We also found a concentration camp with dead bodies in it that they hadn't been able to cover up before our troops got there. It was horrible. And all these dead, emaciated bodies in a trench. And I took pictures of that, which I gave to the Hebrew Union College. And then we met the Russians finally. We fired our last shot at a little town not too far from Leipzig.
Wonderful.
And the Russians were across the river.
I
didn't meet any, but the infantry did, and they had a wonderful time.
I bet they did. Well, I know we only have a couple minutes left. Let me just ask you what you did after the war.
After the war, I wanted to stay in the Army. I had a chance to stay in the regular Army, but my wife didn't want to raise children in the Army, and I didn't really either. And my father wanted me in the family business. So I did go in the National Guard, and I stayed in the reserve after that for a while. I just missed going to Korea.
I imagine. So you were in the optical business?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
In the optical business.
Well,
for years.
You've had a great story. If there's anything you've left out, we probably have 4 or 5
Well,
minutes.
like that man said who just saved all those guys in Iraq, I was certainly no hero. I was only doing my job the whole time, and it was a lot of work. But it was self-satisfying after it was all over, and I think I did it. I know I did it as well as I could,
Wonderful.
And that I was effective.
Well, I thank you for your service, and we all do, and I appreciate your time coming down here.
Well, thank you. It's
You're
an
welcome,
honor
sir.
to be interviewed.
Terrific, thank you.